relationship styles and intimacy styles and how they differ. So I figured I could set off a whole bunch of definitions at you guys, and you can sit there with your notes and do whatever, but I feel that's not the most productive thing. What I want to talk about is how to communicate and how to understand what the difference is between your relationship style and your intimacy style. Now, when I say intimacy style, what does that mean? That means, to me, it's how you express affection or intimacy towards another person. This isn't something that's static. It's not necessarily an orientation, and it can change over time, depending on the people you're with. You express intimacy differently with family, with friends, with significant others or partners, whatever you want to call them. But intimacy is something that everybody does express differently. So, for example, the hottest topic, I'm sure, is in a relationship. Many sexuals will express intimacy through sexual contact, or eventually through sexual contact. Not necessarily right away, but a lot of sexuals in a relationship will have that expectation that it's going to escalate to that point at some point. Maybe after marriage, maybe after a set number of dates, the 3 dates, the 5 dates, the 3 months, whatever it is. But the way I like to explain it when I'm coming out as asexual and people ask me what that means, is I say that my way of expressing intimacy is just different. I often draw an analogy to angry people. Some people, when they get angry, they will scream, they will shout, they will throw things. Other people, when they get angry, they go completely quiet. Some people, when they fall in love, want to hug, want to cuddle, want to hold hands. Other people, when they fall in love, want to jump into bed together. Other people want to tie people up, or be tied up, or any other thing under this umbrella. And each person and each interpersonal connection has that unique way of expressing that emotion, that affection, that intimacy. And that'll change again over time, depending on the person you're talking to, depending on the mood you're in. So when we talk about intimacy styles, often there's a broad themes to each individual person's intimacy. One person in relationships will tend towards being very touchy-feely. We might call this sensual. So they might want to hold hands, hug, cuddle, maybe even kiss in a non-sexual manner. Other people in relationships much prefer the more sexual relationships. So they'll create sexual tension and they'll eventually have sex. Other people in relationships, in close relationships, will have what we might call aromantic ways of expressing affection. So be that commitment, moving in with a partner, or generally doing things that are nice for them without necessarily that romantic overtone. So that's one entire dimension of relationships that often does not get talked about at all, is how you express affection and how you receive affection. So I think that's equally important as well to know about yourself, about what makes you feel good, what makes you feel loved. I know this is probably a shared experience among a lot of people here, especially, where I've had a relationship in the past, where we talked past each other. We talked completely different languages when it came to body language. We spoke English. We could talk to each other, but we really couldn't communicate through body language, because my method of expressing affection and intimacy was things like a scratch on the shoulder, or a hug, or a cuddle. Whereas his method of expressing intimacy was sexual. When he wanted to tell me that he loved me, he would want to have sex to make me feel good. If I wanted to tell him I loved him, I wanted to give him a hug to make him feel good. That's all fine and dandy. I know that I like giving hugs. But to him, it felt there was a lack. To him, it wasn't the right way for him to receive that affection either. So I see a lot of nods. This is something that I Awesome. So I wanted to highlight that aspect of relationships where there's the intimacy style. You've got how you give intimacy and how you receive and receive intimacy are two very important things to think about and to talk about in a relationship. If your partner is of the variety where holding hands is their way of expressing intimacy, and they hold your hand, but that's not how you feel intimacy, then you may be left out in the dark. You may end up feeling unattractive, not loved, not important when the exact opposite could be true. So that's one aspect of relationships. The other one I wanted to talk about was relationship styles, as separate from intimate styles. So any style of intimacy can be mixed with any type of relationship you like. Pick and choose your favorites, and then find someone that likes it as well. Relationship styles, I like to think of everything on a spectrum. So you've got everything from monogamy to polyamory. You've got open relationships to closed relationships. You've got hierarchical relationships to egalitarian relationships. I'll take a moment to explain those terms. So we'll start off with egalitarian to hierarchical. They follow the very base definition of the word very well, where a hierarchical relationship will be, for example, my significant other is the most important person in my life. If they call me and I'm in the middle of a lunch with my friend and they need something, I will pick up. They have a hierarchically higher position than friendship, for example. Or in a polyamorous community, you might have a primary partner. That is, you have more commitment, more involvement, and that can be defined however you like it to be. Commitment can be defined in any way you feel inclined. And then you might have a secondary partner, where there's still commitment, but there's the understanding between both of you that your primary partner comes first. On one end of the spectrum, you can shift all the way over to the other end, which is egalitarian. On this end, you tend to get the relationship anarchists, for example. That's kind of the extreme, where relationship anarchists say, everybody is important to me equally. You're all awesome. And I will pay attention to whoever I think needs it most at this moment, regardless of whether you are my primary, my secondary, my significant other, my friend. Label doesn't matter. So anywhere on that spectrum, some people feel more secure in a hierarchical relationship because they feel that they know where they are, they know what level of commitment they can give and receive. Others feel more secure in the egalitarian relationship because it leaves it more fluid and free as time goes on to redefine or to treat people as you see and feel is best in that instant without placing labels or needing a hierarchy in there. I like to think that as one dimension. Another dimension is our open versus closed relationships. And this could be in any possible way. So a closed relationship typically means you're not allowing other people in. So if it's a closed sexual relationship, for example, then you would only have sex with that one partner that it's closed with, or more, one or more. So there's such thing as closed polyamory as well, where you have a triad, for example, 3 people who will only have sex with each other if it's sexually closed. On the other end of it, you've got an open relationship, where you'll share some things in a context of a relationship, and other things you're allowed to take outside of the relationship. What's very common in open relationships is to have it closed in one aspect and open in another. So unless relationship anarchy is the only one I've ever seen truly open in all ways. Most other relationships will say, I want to be emotionally monogamous or emotionally closed. But hey, if you have sex with other people, I don't care. So there's that spectrum as well. You've got kind of 2 axes going on. The third one I want to talk about is polyamory versus monogamy. I think most people will know the definitions, but monogamy, or at least ideal monogamy, is the sense that you have one partner, one significant other in your life, and that's the only relationship you have at a time. It can go from what is sometimes called serial monogamy, where you have one relationship at a time, but once you break up with someone, you might date another. It can also be strict monogamy, where you have one partner in your life ever. That's something that some people do and are very happy with as well. You go right up to polyamory, where you can have, in theory, as many partners as you like. In practicality, you're limited by time, effort, things like that. If you all want to date me, it would be great, but I don't have time to take you all on a date before dinner. So I think that's just about what I wanted to say. I'm not going to go over every type of relationship, except to stress that your intimacy style and your relationship style can mix and match in just about any possible way. So any of these relationships that we talk about, you can do sexually, or romantically and sexually, or none of the above, anything. And in any kind of intimacy style, you can also match it up with any relationship style. And I'm going to hand it over to Sophie in case she wants to say anything, and then we'll probably go over to So, how do people feel about opening this up to discussion right now? Yeah? All right. Bring on the questions.
I just wondered if there's some, the gay yard for gays, right?
Gay
Is there
yard?
some you could sense the asexual part in a room and be able to hit on that?
Let's say, hey, everyone, who thinks I'm asexual? Some people? Who thinks I'm not?
Oh,
Some more people. Evidence would suggest that in an asexual conference, some asexuals can perceive that I might be asexual. Personally, I don't think I've ever had an A-star, so to speak. Maybe some other people have.
One thing I've noticed is that it's not instantaneous, like you'll meet a person and you'll instantly know their taste. I've come across 3 different scenarios, 3 different friends who I've known for quite a while, and then I can quickly say, yes, you're ace, go look it up, it's probably you, and I've been right 3 times for 3 right now.
Or an asexual magnet, apparently. Well, he's just asexually reproducing. Oh. Thank you for broadening our view. In short, as far as finding asexuals to ask out, I'm sure that's probably where this was going, am I right?
yeah, give a sense who, so that you don't make a mistake of trying to get on your wrong type of person.
Well, to be honest, I would never consider it a mistake to hit on the wrong person. You try, maybe you bat it out, that's fine. I've been hit on by sexual people of all varieties. I consider it a compliment. I'm not interested as much, but I consider it a compliment. If you're looking specifically for aces, if you're getting frustrated on hitting on, 100 people to find one, there are places like Facebook, various asexual-oriented dating sites. I know OkCupid is also quite queer-friendly, including asexuals, but they don't let you set asexual as your orientation. Do they not? No, they don't. No, I swear OkCupid has asexual. Okay, yes, you know the profile. That's it. So there are dating websites you can find. Avon specifically is not allowed to be a dating website, but you can ask there and people will direct you to dating websites. And there's this conference. But on that note, I think that's a great transition to mixed relationships. Those aren't doomed. They're great. I don't think you have to date somebody who's the same orientation necessarily. I'm not gonna lie, I find it harder. There is a lot more communication that necessarily has to happen. So that doesn't mean that you're only allowed to date 1% of the population. If you're willing to put in the work and you do find somebody that you genuinely like in many other ways, things can happen. Is there anybody else?
What about aromantic relationships?
Aromantic relationships are absolutely in existence. I've heard them often referred to as queer platonic relationships. So a relationship that's completely platonic, it's non-sexual, non-romantic. I've seen them manifest in myriads of ways, but there's definitely, some people don't believe me when I say there's a difference between a friendship and a queer platonic relationship, but there is, and anybody in one will be able to say there is. Though, just like sexuals can't tell us what sexual attraction feels like, well, they'll probably not be able to tell you exactly why it's different, but it is there. Some examples. Let's bring this down to the earth. I've seen people with life partners that they've never physically touched ever in their entire life, and they never will. But what they do is they live together as roommates, they support each other financially, emotionally, and in many other ways, and they are life partners. So where one will find a new job, part of the consideration will be if I move, can my partner find a job in this new town as well? So there's that level. I think the primary difference, at least to me, between a friendship and a queer platonic relationship is that level of commitment and caring. Whether it manifests romantically or sexually or neither, that commitment and caring and kind of relationship-y aspect is still there. And that's, again, another intimacy style that you get to negotiate yourself. The great thing about being such a small community is we can invent all the rules as we go. Anyone else?
question about if people who are asexual get married, is it legally recognized? And what about when that dissolves?
That's a really complicated question.
We said you had time.
Well, we're going to answer in two different ways. So I'm from Canada and Southeast from the States. So you can answer first if you like.
Well, first of all, it also depends on the asexuals in the relationship. Because some asexuals do have sex, even when in asexual relationships for various reasons. There's a lot of reasons for that. So that wouldn't be an issue in that case, but I'm assuming that you need two celibate asexuals who are in a relationship together.
Or it's happening less than once a year.
Right. Oh, is that the rule?
Yeah.
Wow, that's very specific.
Hey, happy anniversary. We should,
Yes, ask her.
I was going to say in Canada, I don't know so much about the States, but well, first off, there's the official and the unofficial. I'm not exactly sure what the official route is. I haven't looked this up. I'm not exactly getting married anytime soon. But I know that there has been relationships that are difficult to get recognized by the government. For example, if one partner is Canadian, one partner is American, and they want citizenship, that has been a struggle, especially when both partners are openly ace. Yeah, I'm seeing some nods. As far as the actual having to sleep with each other a regular amount, I'm sure that that's one thing where if you're not trying to do something, I don't think they would look into it particularly strictly.
Well, if I can add something, I mean, if you're getting married, unless you tell the person you're asexual, if you're getting married in a church, unless you tell the person you're asexual or something, they're not going to know, they're not going to refuse you marriage. If your partner wants to know the marriage, like to have it as a rule, then there's a case if it's Catholic law, yeah.
Right.
Because the marriage has to be consumed.
Right. Well, I don't know at which point two asexual people living together as roommates, can you suddenly find yourself in common law? Like if a man and a woman live together, after a year they're deemed common law. Whether both of them are really interested in that or not. So then if things go south, they get into divisions of assets, and that's tricky.
To be
But
honest,
I wouldn't want to get backed into that corner without even realizing I got beaten into that corner.
are you ready to go inside?
I don't know for sure. It came up very flippantly a few years ago. I think that in order to be a common law couple, that the couple has to somehow declare themselves that, but I don't know if that's wrong or not. I know around the time in Canada when same-sex marriage was being recognized, my brother and his friend, who were close friends and had been roommates, said, hey, we should be common law, and then we can get this tax break. But they mostly just like the fact that they had the same name on their answering machine, they were Jason Days.
Yeah, in Canada, you have to apply for common law status with your taxes. Your criminal taxes. Yeah.
Okay, because it used to just happen.
Oh, really? Scary.
Yeah.
That is scary.
Well, no, what happened was relationships would break down, and then the lower income person, usually the woman, was left kind of bereft of resources. So that's why they created common laws, so that women could have a recourse when a relationship did go south to get some some of the financial gain that had been made as a couple.
Well, as far
So-
as I know, I have two examples of couples that are friends, and one filed for common law, and they shared finances and everything and live together. The other, they keep all their finances separate. They're in a romantic relationship, but they've never filed, and they could, according to the government, they're roommates.
So it sounds like if you file a joint tax return, you're declaring yourselves in
Well,
Canada at least.
I think it's a box that you can tick.
So, I think the answer to both your questions there is that only is it an issue if one of the parties bring it up and they haven't filed for common law, and the government intervenes and kind of typically rules that they are common law, because they're after a certain amount of time, and then assets get divided. So if you apply for common law, you're automatically common law for 6 months. If you don't apply and there's no issues and you just break up and you can sort things out, then sort things out. But if you can't sort things out and it's past a certain length, then the law gets involved and gets ugly. Because I have friends, my probably all for the side of that I've seen all the results of.
There was one person here.
I just wanted to bring up, since so few people aren't so seem to be familiar with Canadian law, I think, country, filing joint taxes in the U.S., you file them as a couple, I understand. But in Canada, you file as a couple, but it's not really the same way. It's very different from in the U.S., whereas in the U.S. you always file as a couple. But in Canada, you file individual tax returns, where you say, I'm married to this person, and the government considers that. But in the U.S., like, their income is very much together. Also, Italy sounds like they might not have no fault divorce. But in Canada, you can just say we want a divorce. And you could be like, is there a reason? It's like, no, we just decided to get a divorce, and you can just legally do that thing. They go out.
You do have to wait a year.
Oh, you have to wait a year?
But, yeah, you have to be separated for a year. But I think the other one that came up was annulment. And I think that might even be like an old Catholic Church term that you prove that a marriage was never consummated. So within the Catholic Church, you can say, I'm not divorced, I'm annulling this marriage, therefore, I was never married, therefore, I'm eligible to marry again. Catholics still are over
So I was never married staying. It's not like I'm divorced.
You could be.
Okay, so I actually decided to Google it out of boredom. So in Canada, as of 2007, common law is described as the couple has been living in a conjugal, which is marriage, relationship for 12 years, continuous months, with or without religious consent. The couple, so that was number one. Number two, the couple are parents of a child by birth or adoption. So regardless of official or religious matrimony. And three, one couple has custody or control of the other partner's child.
So could you be common law married? Like if someone had several children with several different people, could they be common law married?
That I don't think it's intended for an ace room, but more of a courtroom.
Legal polyamory. Yes.
What about mismatched type relationship styles, like sensual and person that's not so?
I'm sorry, I can't quite hear you.
Mismatched relationship styles.
Okay.
One that's like one who's more sensual and one who doesn't like sensual.
Yes.
Well, actually, this just came up, and David J. had a whole panel on touch on consent, and I don't know if any of you were at that one. Show of hands. So you're definitely, boundaries, like what partners could communicate with each other and say, is this something you'd be willing to do? Is this something, how far would you be willing to? There's like a lot of communication to make sure that they're on the same page and that they're comfortable with, where those boundaries are.
And I think it's important to acknowledge that that's a really important part of a relationship for a lot of people. So if you are in a mixed relationship where one person's intimacy style is radically different from another person's, or even slightly different, right? If that is something that's very important to you or to them or to both of you, then that's something that needs to be communicated. It's possible that if one person's intimacy style involves things that are past the other person's boundaries. For example, if I'm very sensual and somebody here doesn't like it all being touched, hypothetical. I'm like, well, I really need hugs to be in a relationship. It's not a relationship unless I can have hugs.
I don't want any hugs.
Well, I guess I can't hug you then, right?